This is Shelley Craft coming to you live on SNNLive. We're at the LD Micro Invitational 2017 in the Lux Hotel in Bel Air, California. With me today is Jim Coleman from Yangtze River Development Limited. It's a publicly traded company and the symbol is YERR. Jim, welcome to SNNLive.
Thank you, Shelley.
It's good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get started with an overview of the company, and then we'll go from there.
No problem. Yangtze River Development is a NASDAQ traded company. We're on the capital markets right now. We have a market cap of approximately $2.1 billion. And what we are is we are an infrastructure development company in China. We are building a project in Wuhan, China, which is the capital of Hubei province in central China, located on the Yangtze River, which is the third largest river in the world. And what we are doing is we are building a port and a railroad connecting project with all the logistics supports and development of real estate in a trade-free, tax-free zone designated by the Chinese government in Beijing, and it's part of the entire One Belt, One Road economic policy of China.
So what role do you play in this?
Well, my role is very simple. I'm in charge of everything that takes place in the United States. I liaison, because of my background, with everything that has to do with being a publicly traded company. I interface with the SEC, I interface with NASDAQ, I interface with FINRA. I also liaison with the different investment banking firms and the entire investment community. I deal with research companies, individual investors, as well as the larger firms. Also, one of the things I do is I make sure that we are compliant with all the rules and regulations that are associated with being a publicly traded vehicle.
So who's paying the company for all of this construction?
Well, we are a privately owned company and nobody's paying us. We own the project. We're not a developer. We own the actual project.
So how do you make money?
Well, very simply, our group so far has invested $300 million US in our own project. What will happen is we will still continue to do the finishing of the construction, which requires another $800 million, which we're in the process of securing. Once the project is totally completed, we will have 8 berths for 5,000 to 10,000 metric ton ships that'll sail from Wuhan out to the rest of the world. We are also the starting point of a railroad that the Chinese government has already built as part of their One Belt, One Road economic policy that goes from Wuhan, China, all the way to Rotterdam, Netherlands. And you can ship right now by freight from Wuhan to Rotterdam. So we unite the two cheapest forms of bulk transportation, which are water, which has been with man since the dawn of man, and railroads, which have really come into their own since the Industrial Revolution. So what happens is when everything is completed, we will generate fees from every piece of cargo that comes in and out of the city. For example, every single metric ton that gets shipped into Wuhan, we get paid a fee of 25 RMB, which translates to $3.50. The largest logistics trading company in China, their form of like a Federal Express, they have already committed to putting 5 million metric tons of goods through our port per year. That's 17.5 million just to come into the dock. Then they have to download and put into warehousing, which they have to pay for warehousing, and then it gets shipped out again. If it gets shipped out by railroad, they pay for that. On the other side of the project, from the water side to the land side, we're building 1,900 meters of railroad uploading and downloading to accommodate that railroad that goes all the way to Rotterdam, and we get paid for everything that gets unloaded and uploaded onto that train.
How long will it take to finish the project?
We anticipate that it's about another 3 years. Until then, it's a special kind of company. It's not your typical PE multiple pie in the sky. And by the way, we're not a greenfield project. We've already completed 100,000 square meters of footprint of office buildings. So this is a project, as I mentioned, we've been started in 2007, and we've already put over 300 million US of our own money into the deal. And it's all private, but it's a very high-profile project in China. And Wuhan is a very key location. And the best way really to get a good thought or image of the situation is picture an old wagon wheel. and you put the hub right on the center of Wuhan, which, by the way, is a small little city of 10 million people living in the city proper and 35, 40 million people in the metropolitan area. But you put the hub of that wheel right over Wuhan with all the spokes going out. Those are all the railroads and the waterways. To the north, the railroads run up to Beijing and up to Harbin. To the east, they go over to Shanghai and all the cities in between. To the south, they go to Shenzhen and Hong Kong. To the west, they go to western China, where there's over 300 million people living. And to the northwest, it goes to Limqiu, which also then hooks up with that railroad that goes all the way to Rotterdam.
Wow, it's an interesting project. I mean, I know the scaling of size in China when it comes to, they could build a city, they build islands. I mean, it's usually, you know, mind-boggling how big and how fast it all gets done. Question for you: is this all Chinese labor? Is that? Well,
that's an interesting question. The way we're set up and we're structured is we are not Chinese labor intensive. We have a management team and we have a core of top people. What we're going to do is we are going to sub out the various components. Right now we're in negotiations with a couple of the largest construction companies in the world, which are multinational companies, and therefore what they'll do is they'll come in as a construction manager, for example, and they'll bring in local companies to work under their guidance, but they're not Chinese. But we do have some Chinese companies that are also competing to do some of the work. It's a very large project, and it's funny that you mentioned about cities. Just to give you an idea of the scope of this particular project, when it's completed, we'll have between 350 and 400,000 people living and working on this location, commuting in or living there. The city has already built a road from the middle of the town to come out to our facility, which is a 20-minute drive, and they are expanding the metro, 2 metro stops, to be able to accommodate the flow of people. And to give you really kind of a real perspective, the size of our project is approximately the same size as the city of New Orleans.
Let's get your website out there for more information.
Sure. The best 2 ways to look at our company and get some information is go on YouTube, go under the stock symbol YERR, and then scroll down to Yangtze River Development Limited. There's a wonderful high-speed 13.5-minute video which will give you a comprehensive overview of not only this project but what's going on with China. Our website is www.yerr.com.cn.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Coleman, Yangtze River Development Ltd. The symbol is YERR. It's a publicly traded company on NASDAQ Capital Markets. I'm Shelley Kraft. This is SNNLive, and we're coming to you from the LD Micro Invitational 2017 at the Lux Hotel in Bel Air, California. Thanks, Jim, for coming on.
So I appreciate you having us on.
My pleasure.